Hello, everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you're new here and you're enjoying this series so far, make sure to subscribe to my channel, like the video, and share it with your friends who might find it helpful. In today's video, we're going to set up TanStack router and TanStack query from scratch. Let's dive right in. Before jumping into the code, let's first understand the two powerful tools we'll be working with. These tools are part of the TanStack ecosystem, developed by the same team behind other popular libraries like React Table. Let's begin with TanStack Router. TanStack Router is a fully featured, type-safe, and framework-agnostic routing library for modern web applications. Think of it as the brain behind navigation in your app. It decides which component or page should be rendered based on the current URL. But you might be wondering, how is it different from something like React Router? Well, TanStack Router is designed with modern standards in mind. It's fully typed, supports asynchronous operations, and is built with data fetching in focus. It allows you to preload data before rendering a page, similar to what you may have seen in Next.js or Remix. This means your components receive the data they need without having to fetch it themselves. It also supports advanced features like route-based code splitting, nested layouts, and even server-side rendering. So instead of manually wiring everything together, you get a clean and powerful architecture for managing your app's routing. Now, let's talk about TanStack Query, which you might also know as React Query. TanStack Query is a library for managing data in your frontend application, especially server state. It makes it super easy to fetch, cache, sync, and update data from APIs. The best part? You don't have to manage things like loading states, error handling, or caching manually. It handles it all for you. For example, if you're fetching user data from an API, you just define your query once. TanStack Query will take care of everything else: loading indicators, retries on failure, caching the results, and even refreshing the data in the background. It also integrates beautifully with TanStack Router. When you combine them, you get a powerful system where the router fetches data before the page renders, and TanStack Query keeps everything up to date and in sync. In simple terms, TanStack Router handles navigation, while TanStack Query handles the data. Together, they make building full-featured, modern React applications more efficient and maintainable. Now that we understand what these tools do, let's jump into the code and see how to set them up. I've included useful links in the video description so you can explore them further. What we're covering today is just the beginning. Let's get started with the setup. We'll begin by configuring TanStack Router, followed by setting up TanStack Query. We'll also use file-based routing in our frontend app for better organization and scalability. Open your project in Visual Studio Code. Once it's open, go ahead and open a new terminal. Navigate into the frontend folder using the cd command and start the development server. Don't worry, I'll explain why we're starting the server now a bit later. Next, open another terminal window and make sure you're also in the frontend directory. Now I need to install the TanStack Router package. Pause the video and run the command that I've pasted. Once the installation is complete, we need to install the TanStack Router Vite plugin as well. So again, pause the video and run the next command. Once that's done, open the vite.config.js file. Inside the plugins array, I will paste the code. Pause the video again and follow along. Make sure this plugin is listed at the very top of the array. If it's not, it might not work correctly and could cause errors. Also, remember to import the plugin at the top of the file, and don't forget to save your changes. Since our server is already running, you'll notice two things when you save the file. First, a folder named .tanstack will be generated in the root of your frontend directory. Second, you'll see an error saying that it's looking for a routes folder inside the src directory. So let's create that folder now to resolve the error. Make sure to name it exactly as routes. Every letter matters. Once the routes folder is created, go back to the vite.config.js file and save it again to restart the server. Now, you'll see a new error. This time, it's looking for a special file named __root.jsx. Let me explain what this file is. The __root.jsx file serves as the main layout for your entire application. It wraps all your other routes and usually contains shared elements like the navbar, sidebar, and global providers such as themes. Anything defined here will remain visible across all pages. Inside this file, we use the outlet component to display child routes dynamically based on the URL. So in simple terms, __root.jsx is the top-level route that holds your app's consistent layout. Let's go ahead and create this file inside the routes folder. Once you do that, you'll notice the code inside is automatically generated. This is one of the reasons I asked you to run the server beforehand. If you check your terminal now, you'll see that the errors are gone. Instead, you'll see a message that says generated route tree. You'll also notice a new file has been created in the src folder called routetree.gents. We'll import this in our main.jsx file later. Now open the main.jsx file. Right after the if statement, we'll create a new variable called router. Inside this variable, we'll use the createRouter function. Make sure to import it at the top. As a parameter, we'll pass the generated route tree from the file we just mentioned. Make sure to import that as well. Now let's improve how we render our app. First, create a variable that gets the root element from your HTML. Const root element equals document.getElementByD root. This grabs the element where our React app will mount. Next, we'll add a check to only render our app if this element is currently empty. If root element.innerHTML. Inside this if block, we'll initialize React using version 18 syntax. Const root equals React DOM.createRoot root element. And finally, we'll render our application. Root render. Inside the render method, we'll place all our components. Now close the if block. Instead of rendering the app component, we'll now render router provider. Don't forget to import this component. Also, we need to pass a prop named router and assign it the router variable we just created. Save the file, and now let's check our progress. If you haven't already started the server, now is the time to do so. In my case, it's already running, so I'll just open the URL in my browser. You should see whatever content is inside your root div element. And if you see a not found message, that's totally fine. We haven't added any page components yet. Let's add one now. Inside your routes folder, create a new file called index.jsx. This will serve as our home page. After creating it, reload your browser. You should now see hello/ or any content you've added. Awesome. We've successfully set up TanStack router. Now, let's set up TanStack query. As usual, we'll start by installing the package. Pause the video and run the command I've pasted. Let the installation complete. Then, open your main.jsx file. Just above the router variable, create a new variable called queryClient. Inside it, initiate a new instance of the queryClient class. Be sure to import it. Now, let's talk about why we need to give the queryClient as context to the router. Typically, when using TanStack query, we wrap our entire app with queryClient provider. This gives all components access to the same queryClient. However, when using TanStack router alongside it, the router also needs access to the same queryClient. Why? Because the router can preload data before rendering a route. And for that, it relies on the queryClient to do the fetching behind the scenes. To make this work, we pass the queryClient as a context parameter to the createRouter function. This way, both the router and our components are connected to the same data layer. It enables powerful features like data preloading, background syncing, and shared caching. Now, inside the createRouter function, add a context property. Set it to an object that includes queryClient. We'll also add a few more parameters to make our routing experience smoother. Default preload, intent. Default preload stale time, 0. Scroll restoration, true. This ensures your route loaders are always called when needed. Now, we need to wrap our app with the query client provider component. Place it just under your clerk provider and move all existing components inside it. Pass a client prop to the provider and assign it the query client variable. Don't forget to import the provider at the top and save the file. Now let's test everything by fetching user data. First, go to your backend. Open the app.js file and find a /protected route. Instead of returning the full user object, we'll return only the relevant fields. I will give ID, user.id, username, user.username, first name, user.firstname, last name, user.lastname, image URL, user.image URL. Now back in the front end. To avoid writing the full backend URL every time, we'll use Vite's proxy feature. I'll paste in the code for that. Pause the video and add it to your vite.config.js. Once that's done, update the route in your backend from /protected to /API/protected. Now, if you visit localhost and navigate to /API/protected, you should see the user data from your backend. Awesome! We've confirmed that both frontend and backend are connected. Now go back to your index.jsx file inside the routes folder. Rename the component to homepage. Just after the function declaration, use the useQuery hook from TanStack query. Make sure to import it. Provide two options to the hook. Query key, which is like an identifier for the data. I will add test query as my key. And query fn, a function that fetches data from our /API/protected endpoint. Fetch the data, parse it as JSON, and return it. Now destructure data and is loading from the hook's return value. Add a simple if statement. If his loading is true, return a loading message. And finally, render the data using JSON.stringify data. Reload your browser and you should see the user details we returned from the backend. And that's a wrap. In this video, we cover how to set up TanStack router and TanStack query, along with basic testing to ensure everything works. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you're enjoying this series, I'd love to hear your feedback. You can also suggest new topics you'd like me to cover next. Join my Discord server. Link is in the description, so you don't miss out on updates or discussions. Make sure to like this video as it really helps and motivates me to keep creating more. If you're excited for what's coming next, or if you're new here, consider subscribing to the channel. Give a video a thumbs up and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next one. That's all for today's video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.